Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior professional, Mr. Vivek Kumar. Vivek, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. A pleasure.
Thank you. Vivek is the Chief Executive Officer of Lexicon Public Relations and Corporate Consultants, and he has worked with several multinational corporations. So Vivek, let's talk today about Lexicon. Tell me about this venture.
Sure. So Lexicon actually is one of the most experienced and still independent Indian PR firms. Mm-hmm. We were formed in 96, and we've always focused on a boutique layout. Mm. We've never had ambitions of becoming the largest, but focused on good work, valuable work. Mm. Our core strength lies with startups, NGOs on social impact, and corporates to that extent. Okay. We don't look at individuals and celebrities in that sense.
Okay.
And we've been doing well. We operate from Delhi, headquartered in Delhi, operate all over India, give services across the world where required, and doing well.
So tell me, for our viewers and listeners, what is public relations and why is it important in the corporate world?
Sure. Actually, it's a very good question because people seem to be not fully aware of public relations.
Correct.
And in general parlance, it goes into the PRO kind of a situation.
Yeah.
Right. Or on the other hand, people who do understand a bit of it club us with advertising. What we have to look at in public relations is that this is a very strategic function. And it can operate at many levels. Mm-hmm. It can operate right next to the chairman and the board of an organization. Mm-hmm. It can operate parallelly to the marketing function, and it can operate below the marketing function.
Okay.
What we really do is we help an organization protect and project its reputation and to create trust with the various stakeholders.
Wow. Okay. And how would you say PR differs from networking?
Yes, interesting, because that is another question that we do get, that is networking and PR the same thing? Networking is a process within the PR ambit. It is not the whole thing, right? In networking, you're meeting the right people, the influential people, hopefully. PR goes beyond that, right? It defines who you're meeting, when are you meeting, what are you meeting about, what else do you want to do about that, right? What is the message that you'll be giving? And what is the objective with which you're meeting them? So it goes much beyond just networking. And of course, there are other functions in PR which are not about networking, but which are about message dissemination and perception creation.
Wonderful. And based on all the experience, and you said you're one of the oldest PR firms and probably the most experienced, what are some of the more common errors a lot of organizations make in handling PR, and how do these mistakes get corrected?
Sure. One big error people make is that they forget to listen to the external voice about their company and about themselves. That is the first and most important signpost that they are making an error. Right? Apart from that, they also make the mistake of underestimating PR. And they're clubbing it completely under the marketing function. That's the second error they make. Third error is that, networking and PR is the same thing. Also, what tends to happen is that in management schools, PR is not really talked about as a subject. Advertising is not,
Correct.
PR is not.
Correct.
And therefore, the sign of the time is that every top manager today is a MBA, generally. And they do believe that they have the knowledge of the world. And within that knowledge, PR has not been set in. And they need to understand the critical role that PR and communication plays in the life.
Interesting. So, when I talk to people who are experts in brand management, I ask them what goes into building a strong brand. My question to you is, what goes into building a strong corporate image?
The world has changed, right? I mean, earlier you could just say that if I do a good job, that's enough, and we'll go on from there.
Yeah.
Today, it is more about making sure that you are passing the test with every lens
Mm.
that different stakeholders may look at you.
Mm.
So it is about really being consistent, being transparent, living up to your words. These are the three most important qualities.
Okay.
And fourth is creating a roadmap where you want to go.
Mm.
Because if you are directionless in terms of PR, you cannot create an image. What is the other thing which people and organizations forget to do is to align the internal behavior with the external image they want. And that becomes extremely critical. And I've seen PR firms, PR professionals, they focus on just the external job without being able to advise the company that they need to adjust the internal behavior.
Right.
Without that, once that is exposed, it becomes a difficult situation for the company.
Very interesting. So when I was reading about you, what came out strongly, and that I guess is the case with most PR companies, is that you work to mitigate reputation.
Reputation risk.
The risk of reputation, obviously. So at what stage does one determine that a company or a management is in crisis and that we need some PR work?
See, it is they have to be, with the moment the management realizes that a situation is emerging, which can impact the immediate business or their future business, they are in a crisis. How soon will they call in the cavalry to manage the crisis? It's a different issue altogether. Savvy organizations or organizations that have learned their lessons, they tend to be proactive about this. Other organizations, and especially I've seen startups, they tend to take an attitude that we will ride it out. And we have the charisma and we have got the funding and we have reached so many milestones that this is another milestone we will cross. That's where it is. So crisis can happen at any point of time.
Absolutely.
It can be a smallest to the largest, and it has to be managed.
Very interesting. So, one of the things that we've been seeing in the last, 4 or 5 years is the power of social media. I mean, it can, completely destroy an image if, a bunch of trolls get after you. And I'm not taking any examples, but, when someone starts to troll you and, a whole bunch of them get after you, it can actually create a very, very negative impression. My question to you is, what can social media do to destroy one's corporate image or that of a leader? And how can PR mitigate that risk?
Well, you've given enough examples of what social media can do to destroy the reputation. The first rule of managing social media is that be aware of the moral and social compass of the society. If you're aware of this, you will minimize the chances of things blowing up. So therefore, we're talking about non-biased, especially created for you attacks. All right, where an organization is being targeted in a malicious manner, that becomes a different situation completely. Now, having said that, in both the scenarios, it is really about listening and then either reacting or not reacting. But when you're not reacting, even that is a message that you're giving out. It cannot be not reacting because I want to ignore it. It has to be not reacting because that is the thought out strategy that we want to take forward. At the end of the day, the good thing about social media maliciousness is that it is a storm which will blow out. They will move on to something new. So as long as you can sustain your voice, give the correct picture, you will be fine.
Fascinating. So, when I was very, very young, just joined ITC, I'm talking of the early 80s, PR was always a very big part of ITC's portfolio. In those days, PR was meeting a lot of the journalists, meeting a lot of the influencers as was defined then. But today, it's become a very democratized kind of an environment. And anyone can take a pot shot. Anyone can say a positive thing. what is the role Lexicon or some of the other PR majors can do to manage my whole profile, my impression as a company in a world which is changing by the nanosecond?
Actually, the world is not changing at all.
Okay.
What appeals to human values is the same.
Mm-hmm.
What has changed is the multitude of channels that has become available. What has changed is the shorter time span and the attention span. What has changed is the amount of space that you had in traditional media and the amount of unlimited space that you have in social media and the online space. So therefore, the methods remain nearly the same. It is just that the canvas has become much broader. So yes, even today, you have to know who are the people who set the trend. You have to know you have to meet them, you have to network with them, you have to tell them the correct story. And when I say a story, because story is what people remember. So even when you're talking about positive and good things, it has to be in a story format because that sticks. So method is exactly the same. It's just that if you're talking about a blogger, in my mind, a blogger is also a journalist. He's no less. Because when a blogger takes their property seriously, they are very committed. They don't want to be caught at a misstep. So they want the same treatment, the same justice, and the same evaluation as we would give to anyone else. So where democracy comes in is that everyone is equal. You cannot say that I will only focus on these 5 individuals or these 5 publications. Today, the set has become 100, but the method is exactly the same. So the role for a PR firm becomes larger actually because the audience and the via media and the canvas is much larger.
Much larger and probably more diverse.
Absolutely.
Okay. And my next question to you relates to technology. Every function that impacts the functioning of a corporate has had some serious impact because of technology. I don't know enough about PR, but I'd like to understand from you, how is technology changing the PR working? And you've seen it for the last 25 years.
Absolutely. Technology has always impacted PR. When I started my career, and you may say call it the dinosaur age, but fax machines had just come.
Correct.
And suddenly, instead of taking the press release to every journalist in their offices using a Man Friday, I was able to fax things. The next thing was we attached the fax to the computer, and suddenly the whole process was automated. So it's that journey of technology that's happened at one end on the logistics side of things. The other is today to get to a trend, to understand what's going on in the world. It's coming to me on my computer, on my plate itself, because of it. So a PR firm has to be much more attuned to knowing and using all the social media and search tools to get to the underlying trends. So that's become interesting. But the bigger thing is that in public relations, you're still dealing with human emotions and human perceptions. So while technology has come in to increase and improve the efficiency, the process has remained pretty much the same.
Interesting. So one more question relating to PR, and then I move to the next part. From the time I was very young and when I was in marketing and in finance and leading businesses or whatever, we were always told one thing: release bad news on a Friday and release good news on a Monday. Purely because in those days, bad news would disappear in the newspaper on Saturday, Sunday, and by Monday, everything was forgotten.
Yep.
I'd love to get your perspective. Have things changed, or they also remain the same?
Things have changed. Today, my advice to the clients is release as early as possible the moment you're ready.
Okay.
For the simple reason that bad news, if it gets leaked out and it's discovered from the other end, you have a bigger issue. So get it out as quickly as possible. Good news, you never know when your competitor will beat you to it.
Okay.
So if you're holding on to it, suddenly from being the first, you're not the first.
Well said. Well said. So I'm going to now move on, Vivek, to the next part of our conversation. When I was reading about you, you say that your most fulfilling assignment has been with the Kailash Satyarthi Children's Foundation. Now, I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners know Kailash Satyarthi is a Nobel laureate, but I'd love to get to understand from you what you did and what was rewarding for you.
Absolutely. So it was an opportunity which came to me. I think, when you say the universe moves in mysterious ways,
Mm.
I would put it with that. And when I took it up, I thought I needed a change. I was getting blaze about the kind of things we were doing, and I took the plunge.
Mhm.
I met Mrs. Satyarthi, the Nobel Peace Laureate, Mrs. Satyarthi,
Mhm.
very impressive man and
Mm.
very impressive vision. And when at that point of time, he had already rescued, I think, nearly 85,000 children from the life of captivity and trafficking, etc. And that number was going up. He had also, at that point of time, just won the Nobel Prize.
Mm.
And the interesting thing was that when we look at Nobel Peace Prizes, earlier they were mostly given to people who had been politicians or presidents of countries, or who had done something and that work was over. Kailash Satyarthi, and he was one of the few people whose work was continuing. Therefore, after the Nobel Peace Prize, from his canvas being India, it had to become global. He couldn't just continue to do exactly what he was doing, he had to expand it. And that's where the role of communication came in. So I was fortunate enough to work with him, to assist him, and to manage the whole communication rollout throughout the globe, setting up the whole social media engine, setting up the whole PR engine, making sure that his profile matched what is required, setting up and understanding his vision for the next 10 years, working with him on the campaigns that would define the vision. How it changed me personally was, suddenly, from a very transactional mindset, I started realizing the beauty of humanity. Okay, some people, just to give you a very different kind of an example, you meet a person on the road, right, who's bad to do off in terms of financial and everything. Most people shy away. I would also. Suddenly, from Kailash Satyarthi's experience, I was willing to approach, understand, empathize, go deeper, sit with the person, have a tea with the person. It changed me as a human being.
Wow.
I started to look at people much more deeply.
Amazing.
And when I moved back to the corporate world, I hope I've been able to carry forward.
Amazing. Amazing. So, Vivek, I'm going to now move to the third segment, which is a few questions for you personally. Our viewers and listeners love to get to know my guest a little better. So let me start with a question that what would you say are 3 key milestones or pivot points in your life or your career?
The first point, I think, was just joining the PR industry. Because, PR was an unknown profession when we got into it. And in 1992 specifically. So that was the first thing. The second pivot point for me would have been Kailash Satyarthi, that experience. And the third pivot point for me is that when I brought over Lexicon from the previous owner. So I joined as a CEO, and now I'm an owner CEO.
Wow.
So that's the third point.
Fantastic. And the next question is that as a PR company, which works with so many different individuals, organizations, what are some of the core values you believe in?
That's simple. I mean, for me, it's transparency, number one. It's being true to my words, number two. And it's trying to work for the greater good, that's number three. So these are the 3 things I bring to the table, really, for anyone.
So I have time for 2, maybe 3 questions. My next question to you is that given such an amazing career you've had and worked with so many people, what does success mean to Vivek?
Interesting. I think I would define success for myself as having the ability to do or function in a way which makes the world a better place, without having to worry about the day-to-day issues, the mundane stuff, where you have an organization, you have the capability, you have the infrastructure, which allows you to actually focus on making the world a better place. I know it may sound lame. Some people will say that, you can always focus on making the world a better place. Yes, many people are able to do that. Like I said, I'm very transparent. I do believe that you need a certain foundation to be able to take it forward.
Interesting. And my last question to you, Vivek, this is on the opposite side of success, which is on failure. I've often said that parents in South Asia or Asia don't teach children it's okay to fail. We're always told, come first in class, go to the head of the line, etc., etc. And that manifests itself in our behavior patterns. Yet we fail, we learn. So my question to you is, what are some of your learnings from some of your mistakes?
See, right, life was privileged. I graduated from the Doon School, and so that carries a certain amount of interesting opportunities and doorways which open up. But what failures taught me, and there have been failures, right? Even now, when I took over the firm, right after that, the pandemic started. So you you invest your money hoping for something, and the environment changes completely. Yeah. My learnings really have been two. One is to always focus on the solution. Failures will happen. You have to look at the solutions. So that has been a solution mindset has been the biggest learning. And the other has been to cut your losses early.
Okay.
And not just in terms of finance. You could be investing in a person, you could be investing in a situation. When do you take a call that you need to step back?
Well said. Vivek, on that note, thank you so much. It's been such a privilege speaking to you. Thank you for talking to me about your amazing journey in PR. Thank you for talking to me about Lexicon and the work that you're doing, and also for what you're doing with the Kailash Satyarthi Foundation. And wish you all the best as an owner, CEO of such an incredible PR company. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's been a real pleasure conversing with you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.